of the fact that I didn't understand the level of security that had to happen. But I was smart enough to recognize that if there was an opportunity to, you know, kill Fidel Castro, maybe I gave him the opportunity because I insisted that this event was going to happen in the South Bronx. And if anybody knows what the South Bronx was like in 1995, you can recognize that this is definitely a place that most world leaders would not want to come to. And a world leader like him, that'll be even like, wow, more controversial. So the fact is that I did not trust U.S. Secret Service, and I definitely did not understand Cuban Secret Service. So therefore, I felt I had to have my own security. So I called a friend of mine, Fasfi Fontanez, who was basically a black belt. And he was a black belt, and he was one of the world leading karate champions. Front page of Karate Illustrated. And he was a good friend of mine. We had done something for him. I did something for him earlier in reference to him wanting to learn about being Puerto Rican. He wanted to go to Puerto Rico. I took him on a trip to Puerto Rico, and he was like forever indebted to me. He loved me for that because he was able to see a son that he had not seen because he didn't know about Puerto Rico. And it was an eye-opener for him. So I called him up after several years, and I said, yo, Fasfi, I'm doing this thing. He didn't even ask me any questions. He didn't ask me, well, who is this? What is this? He said, what did you need? I said, listen, bro, I just need about 5 or 6 of your meanest black belts, bro, and at least one female, because I'm having an event where Fidel Castro is going to be there, and I don't trust his security. I don't trust the atmosphere. So I want to be able to have people that can be around in the crowd, that in case anything happens, bro, nothing can happen to him. Nothing. And he said, I got you. He didn't ask me any questions. In fact, I have videos of all these things, you know, for the future reference. He didn't ask me anything other than, yo, I got you. And sure enough, later on I found out he had to get suits for these guys because these are like, you know, guys, thugs, man, who were in prison or who were like, who were black belts, who, you know, they don't give a damn, but they couldn't come in, you know, that they dressed with jeans or whatever. So he said he wound up getting, you know, jackets for these guys to go in there. And then once they were there, you know, he was in charge of putting them in the key place. I told him where Fidel was going to speak at. I told him where Fidel was going to go. So we were able to put people in key places. And I said, the bottom line is, anything happens, bro, they got to just jump up and make sure we circle Fidel. Nothing can happen to him. So he understood. And then the bottom line was, you know, waiting for Fidel to come. And prior to waiting for Fidel to come, we had an incident where the Cuban Secret Service reached out and said to me that there was a person in the crowd that got in as a reporter, and that this person was very anti-Cuba, and she was known for being very disruptive. Her name was Ninochka something, and bottom line is that I told them, well, look, you know, she came in as press, and they said, well, if she's here, Fidel's not going to come in. You know, not going to let him come in because that's she's very disruptive. So I said, okay, no problem. So I went to the Secret Service, and I told the Secret Service, the guy who was in charge of the U.S. Secret Service, that we had an issue, that we had to get this woman out. And the guy told me that's not his problem. I said, what you mean it's not your problem? He said, well, this is your event. She hasn't broken any law, so we have no jurisdiction to use our people to get her out. So I said, wait a minute, so you're responsible for the security for Fidel Castro. This is a woman that the Cuban Secret Service says she's disruptive. So we don't know what is planned. And I'm asking you that she should be escorted out. And you're telling me you can't escort her out because that's not your jurisdiction? Yeah, that's not our jurisdiction. I said, okay, I'll take care of it. So I went to Jerry. I said, Jerry, we got to get this woman out of here. He said, who is she? I said, this woman, he's a reporter, and Secret Service said that they don't have the will or whatever to get her out. But she needs to get out. So he said, let's go. So he got the female black belt and him, and we walked over to where I had told the press. Every press wanted to come in. If I would have allowed every press to come in, we would have had more press than people, you know. So I only allowed CNN, NBC or whatever, and I told them they could put a cable outside, and anybody else could plug into their feed, but we couldn't have everybody there. And I let the HITN, the Latino station, that they can come in, and that's it. And about 2 or 3 reporters, and somehow she got in as a Univision or something. So I went up to her and I said to her, "Excuse me," and I said, "Can I see it?" And I said, I told her in Spanish, "Mira, por razones que no son las mías, I have to ask you to leave." And she said, "¿Por qué?" I said, "Porque el Servicio Secreto Cubano me dice que ellos no se sienten cómodos con usted estar aquí." Dice, "Esto no es Cuba, esto es América. Yo tengo credenciales, yo puedo estar aquí." And I told her, "No, this is New York City and this is the Bronx, but this is a private event and this is my event. You can't be here." She said, "Well, yo no me voy." So I just turned around and said, you handle it." And all I saw was that, boom, boom, boom. She and the cameraman were outside in less than a New York minute, bro. I don't know what they did. I'll let Jerry explain that one day because I didn't even see it. I just turned around and said, "Jerry, you handle it." And he handled it. That was the only other issue. Once that was out, no problem. Fidel was coming. He's on his way. And then the guy who's now the Secretary of State for Cuba, the highest ranking official after, the president, whatever, the Secretary of State, Bruno Rodriguez, I'm sorry. Bruno comes up to me and says, "Julio, queremos que tú vengas a darle la bienvenida a Fidel." And I said, "No." I said, "Bro, I want to stay away from as much of this as possible. I just want this event to happen and let it go," because there was already a protest outside, and people were telling me people were protesting outside. I said, "Who's protesting outside?" I look through the window and I see some dudes that I recognize. I said, "What the fuck?" So I go outside and I walk up to where the protesters were at. I see some homeboys that I know. And I said to them, "Yo, what are you doing?" And they said, "Yo, Julio, what's up, man? Yeah, we're protesting, man. Fidel Castro beat us." I said, "Bro, that's my event." I said, "That's your event?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, shit, man." I said, "Bro, they're paying me $50 to be here." I said, "Bro, who's paying you?" He said, "This guy, he's a politician." That was Ruben Diaz, the whatchamacallit. So, the father. So I said, "Look, bro." He said, "If you want, man, fuck this shit, man. We leave." I said, "Nah, Papa," because I've always done things with these guys. I knew these dudes. These are some of the dudes that I used to hire to go do shit for me, So I said to him, "Look, bro, keep the $50, man. Stay here, get the money, but then get the fuck out, man. Don't be making too much shit here." So they put the fucking signs down. They just stayed there, making noise. I walked back in. Some of the dudes were saying, "Come on," and I said, told them, "Yo, cállate. Don't fuck with this guy." So they were cool. I went back inside. The guys telling me, "You want to come meet Fidel? We want you to be the one." I said, "Papa, no. Congressman Serrano, he's the highest ranking elected official. He should be the one to go and, greet Castro." He said, No. You're the one that's organizing this. We want you to be the one to go. So then my boy Mickey, who was one of the guys that was helping me, he's next to me. He's hearing this shit. He's like, "Yo, bro, what the fuck? Say, yeah, bro. What the fuck? You meet Fidel Castro?" He said, "Yeah, bro." I said, "All right." I said, "Listen, Bruno, we'll go. Can Mickey go?" He said, "Yeah." So when the time came, they brought us to the back, through the kitchen, through the back, through the deliveries coming from the trucks. And when they opened that freaking the big freaking the gate, bro, all I saw was police officer. And then I saw Black Jimmy. And then I heard a helicopter above. And then I see his black limousine, boom, 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 and it backs up into this thing, bro. And I'm like, I'm saying like, wow, this is all for a Latino. And Mickey said, "Bro, close your mouth." Because I was like, I was amazed. And so, sure enough, the limousine backs up, and security comes out, looks around, makes sure everything is cool. He told the driver something. The driver then comes out. He looks to make sure that everything is fine. He gives the nod. Then they open the door, and they started coming out. There was about 5 people with him. There was the then Secretary of State, the UN representative, the head of the UN representative, Raúl Alarcón. I recognize him from many times in college. I read a lot of his speeches and stuff in the New York Times. The interpreter, another person, and then the last one that come out was Fidel, and he was the tallest one, and he's like straight out of tie. I never seen him in a suit and tie. I just seen him with camouflage. So he came out with a suit and tie. He's fixing his tie, and my freaking brain is like, how? What do you say to this guy? Like, even though I was progressive and knew that all that shit that they say about him is like lies, but it still hits you. Yo, this guy really killed people. This is like really this is really that. And this guy's like, oh, guys come. Do I say Mr. President? Do I say Fidel? Do I say Comandante? Do I say, homie? What do I say to this guy? My brain is racing, bro. And sure enough, the Bruno says to him, Comandante, este es el señor Julio Pavón el que organizó este evento para nosotros, para usted. And he shakes his hand. He puts out his hand, man. And I gave him my hand. And he did something to me that only my father taught me. He put both hands over me. And he looked at me. And he said, this is not going to hurt you. And he said, esto no te va a perjudicar a ti. And that shit was like, it was like melting my fucking heart. Because I've done so many things for so many elected officials. From Al Gore, who ran for president for the first time. I organized his first event here on 138th Street. I had dinner with him and his wife Tipper in a restaurant on 138th Street. To Dinkins, helping elect the first African American mayor. For Andrew Stein, Liz Holtzman getting the first women gay elected. It was my help in getting her the Bronx vote, that she got more votes in the Bronx than any of the elected officials, even though she was not supported by not one. The work that we put together for her helped to get elected. I helped all these people, but nobody had ever told me, is this going to hurt me? And am I okay? And this guy who's supposed to be a murderer, a killer, a freaking, evil, the first thing that comes out of his mouth is this not going to, hurt you? And my response was like, no, this is La Sierra Maestra del Bronx. And if you know history, La Sierra Maestra is where the Cuban Revolution had its strength. It was in the mountains. And that's where those 12 guerrillas developed into hundreds of thousands from La Sierra Maestra, from the jungles of La Sierra Maestra. So I told him indirectly, no, I'm okay, because this is the Puerto Rican Sierra Maestra. This is the South Bronx. I'm okay. And he said, he just leaned back. And I said, aquí hay más de 250,000. I told him there was more than 250,000 Puerto Ricans living in the South Bronx. I said, this is our turf. I'm okay. And he went, 250,000 puertorriqueños. Then he put his arm around me and said, Julio, háblame. ¿Quiénes son esta gente? And I'm walking with him with his hand around my neck. He's holding me like a homeboy. And I'm saying, yo, they're going to kill this dude. They're going to shoot me too. And I'm just walking nervously right for him, explaining to him that this place is full of Puerto Ricans. And not everybody agrees, because they don't understand the Cuban Revolution. And not a lot of people there agree with him because they don't understand him. They believe whatever propaganda this country has put out. But they were all there because they believed that what the mayor did of disinviting him was wrong. And that's why they were there. So even though a lot of people might not agree with the Cuban Revolution, maybe some people there might not agree with you personally, but they do agree that what the mayor did to you by disinviting you was wrong, and that's why they're there. And we have school teachers, we have college professors, we have judges, we have factory workers, we have counselors, we have students, and we were just walking. And then when you walked in, I had a lot of friends who would tell me, yo, I'm going to go because you're right, man. What the mayor did was wrong, but I'm not down with this dude, bro. I said, that's cool, as long as you're cool. You're going to be there because I want to make sure I have some of my people there too. And bro, let me tell you something. When the doors opened, and we had purposely set his table on the left, which is closest to the stage, where we had to introduce him and do whatever. And then on this side, that's where everybody else was, all the other tables. And there was like a little barricade, like some rope that we put there or some ribbon or something. And the minute we walked in, people just spontaneously, man, they just got up and started applauding him. It wasn't like you walk into a room that's silent. It was like, the minute he opened the door, it was like Ricky Martin going into a freaking banquet of women, bro. They all jumped up and they started applauding him. And instead of him walking to the left where I was trying to guide him, because it was just me and him and his two security, it was one a U.S. Secret Service and a Cuban Secret Service, and I'm in the middle of the Cuban Secret Service, and us four walking to the door, and instead of moving him this way, he's going straight because people are going like this to extend their hand. So he walks towards them and he starts shaking their hands, man. And then more people, next thing you know, he's in the crowd, man. And the crowd is like, like going crazy. Like everybody wants to, touch him. Everybody wants to shake his hand. And at one point, he was totally surrounded. And the head of security for the Cubans, which is on my side, goes over my body and grabs him by the elbow and wants to move him over. Says, Comandante, por favor, tenemos que ir pa' aquí. And Fidel looked at him, put his hand out of his shoulder, that's what he says, I forgot his name. He said, tranquilo. I think it might have been Jorge. He said, tranquilo, Jorge. Julio dijo que estamos en la Sierra Maestra. So he just did his whole round, bro. And he came down and he sat down, bro. And I was like, thank you, God. And he sat down, and then him and I were there. His people were there. We talked for a little bit, and then we began the event because I wanted the shit to go quick. I wanted to get him out of here. I want to go home, the shit. And sure enough, Carlos was the first one to give everybody a bienvenida, and then he introduced me as to why we were inviting, why we had this event, that what the mayor did was wrong, and that, as Latinos, we look out for each other, and the fact that what the mayor did was discriminatory, and that's why we were here. And then I said to him, listen, we got differences. And he went like this. I said, you were going for the Atlanta Braves in the World Series, man. We were going for the Cleveland Indians because there's more Puerto Ricans than the Cleveland Indians. So yeah, we have differences. Whenever the Cubans play the Puerto Ricans, you want the Cubans to win, we want the Puerto Ricans to win. But that should not be a reason why we can't, be together on stuff. So, we support the fact that you're here. Thank you so much for coming, and blah, blah. And I introduced Saran.